In the territories within Central Europe of what encompasses modern-day Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Slovakia, there lived a brief but critical realm established either in the early 7th century through a unification of the Czechs, Sorbians, not to be confused with Serbians, and other Western Slavic tribes along the Danube River. This realm was led by a king known to us today as Samo. The remarkable story of his rise to power, his successes on the battlefield, and consolidation of his dominion would be known to history as the first official Slavic kingdom. The only contemporary source we have for this era belongs to a Frankish chronicler named Fredegar, who writes that Samo was initially a Frankish merchant who decided to use his money and influence to unify the Slavic tribes in his area of enterprise, in order to resist the violence and extortion reaped upon the Slavic people by the Avar Khaganate. However, his real background is disputed. The Avars were a Turkic nomadic group that migrated from the Eurasian steppes of Central Asia and had occupied the region of the Pannonian Basin since the late 6th century. Initial rebellions against the Avars began by the Wendish tribe, Slavs living in the territory of modern-day Germania. It is thought that Samo had initially started out supplying arms to the rebelling Slavs, and it is likely that he decided to make his move to become king around 631 AD, which is about the time that the constant rebellions were occurring after 626, when the Avars failed in their attempt at taking Constantinople alongside the Persian Sassanid Empire during the last Roman-Persian War. To prove himself to his subjects and solidify his position, Samo won a string of victories against the Avars. The Chronicles of Fredegar reads,
Each year the Huns came to the Slavs to spend the winter with them. Then they took the wives and daughters of the Slavs and slept with them. And among other mistreatments, the Slavs were also forced to pay levies to the Huns. But the sons of the Huns, who were raised with the wives and daughters of these Wends, could not finally endure this oppression anymore and refused obedience to the Huns and began, as already mentioned, a rebellion. When now the Wendish army went against the Huns, the merchant Samo accompanied the same. And so the Samo's bravery proved itself in wonderful ways, and a huge mass of Huns fell to the sword of the Wends.
After these victories, he was subsequently elected by his people as Rex Sclavorum, or Slavic king. To help legitimize his rule, Samo married into the major Wendish families by wedding at least 12 women, fathering 22 sons and 15 daughters. The victories also caused the allied nomadic Bulgar king to the Avars, Alciochus, to flee with 9,000 of his tribesmen westward to settle in the lands of Bavaria within the realm of the Germanic Franks, currently under the rule of King Dagobert I of the Merovingian dynasty. While initially offered sanctuary in these lands, one night Dagobert ordered his army to massacre the Bulgars. Out of 9,000 Bulgars, roughly 700 survived and fled back east to join with the Wends. In that same year, trouble began brewing between Samo and the Franks after it was reported to Dagobert that the Slavs under Samo had been attacking and robbing from Frankish merchants traveling near their respective borders. Dagobert sent an envoy named Sicarius to Samo in order to ask for both justice and submission to him. Samo, however, vehemently refused, stating, "The land we dwell in is Dagobert's, and we are his men, but only so long as he lives in friendliness with us." Sicarius merely responded with, "It is not possible for the Christian servants of God to be the friends of dogs." It should be worth noting that while the Slavic tribes adhered to paganism, the Frankish kings had adhered to Chalcedonian Christianity since the reign of Clovis I since the early 6th century. Samo then replied, "If you are the servants of God, we are the dogs of God, and because you continually go against his will, we have received permission from him to rend you with our teeth." Sicarius was then sent away, and a war became inevitable. Prior to his invasion, Dagobert had forged an alliance with the Kingdom of the Lombards, who were currently ruling most of Italy. Dagobert launched his invasion via a three-pronged attack, and divided his army into three groups: the Alemanni contingent, the Lombards who marched from Italy against the Slovene tribes, and his own Austrasian Franks, who attacked the Czechs and laid siege to one of Samo's strongholds known as Worcestersburg, possibly located within modern-day Slovakia. It was here that Samo and his host met and engaged Dagobert, who lifted the siege of the fortress and met Samo in open battle.
My brothers in arms, look to each other. Mark the man at your side. Fight with him. Guard his flank. protect his rear. Work together, and we shall double our strength in battle.
I need a drink! I am thirsty! So, let's get this over quickly! Batter them and beat their heads so hard their eyes pop out! Then we shall drink, and I shall get royally pissed!
You are warriors indeed! Great warriors! Oh, take up your arms!
And fight!
The battle raged on for 3 days, but eventually the Frankish host was routed. Despite the Alemanni and Lombards achieving success in their engagements, the armies withdrew and Samo successfully managed to defend his domain against one of the most powerful kingdoms in Europe. In the aftermath of the battle, Samo raided the Frankish region of Thuringia several times. The prince of the Sorbian realm, Dervan, subsequently abandoned the Franks and placed himself and his people under Samo's realm. Samo continued to rule for another 27 years until his death in 658 AD. Due to his abundance of male offspring, Samo had no clear heir and his titles were not inherited by anyone. His realm was afterwards split between the resurgent Avar Cognate and other Germanic and Slavic principalities. However, it can be argued that Samo's kingdom helped lay the foundations for the realm of Greater Moravia, which would grow to be one of the largest Slavic states in Central Europe during the 8th and 9th centuries. Slavic resistance against the Avars continued, as their grip on the region became weaker and weaker as they became a more sedentary people, eventually assimilating into the culture and lifestyle of the populace. Their territories were drastically reduced during the successful campaigns of the Frankish king Charlemagne from 791 to 798, but continued to hold out until they were finally destroyed at the beginning of the 9th century by the rising power of the nomadic Bulgar tribe.